Honored to be here. I love your content a lot, dude. You're definitely in my top. Yeah, I'll say it. Top three YouTubers easily. Because nobody else cares as much about my kind of niche, weird interests like you do. So like it's awesome, man. I gotta give you your props. I gotta give you your flowers for sure. So I was gonna go in a little bit about the history of Y2K stuff because um what was really funny, one of the videos that I liked the most, um, from you was and I shared this with my friend Oz. It was the one where you were talking about how like cinephiles are kind of they're sick in a way, and I think that resonated so much with me, and it hit perfectly. It's so rare that I find critique that like really hits me, and I'm like, oh wow, this like kind of stings, but like in a good way, like and it's like taking
Well,
medicine.
I
Uh,
absolutely developed that theory through Kevin Williamson's work for sure, like Dawson's Creek and Scream, but Dawson's Creek particularly, the way that Dawson sabotages every romantic relationship he's in is because he has a cinematic idea of what it's supposed to be,
totally.
you know, which makes him cinephiles are sick people who don't really know how to operate in real situations because no situation is real to them. It's cinematic.
Yeah. No, that really struck with me because ever since the whole thing about my obsession with like Y2K media, it stemmed from, and I'm glad I'm like old enough now to like see how kind of toxic it was growing up for me. But I like never I grew up in and I was homeschooled up until like the 8th grade. So already I was like this kind of like terminally online kid. Like I'd be on the computer for like a lot of my schoolwork, and then if it wasn't for that, then I'd be looking at stuff online that I shouldn't have been looking at. You know, it was only a matter of time till I found the Y2K stuff where like it was just like natural for me to, you know, like be looking at all this media all the time. And when I found out that I remember that point in my life, I found out that like the 90s and the early 2000s like were so different, and that so much culture had happened
Mm-hmm.
in the 2000s, that life for me was going to be, and like, you know, life for like all, not just me but like all zoomers, is so like kind of vastly different than how it's been for like a long time, like when it comes to the consumption of TV, the consumption of uh movies, you know, even stuff like books. Like I feel like I'm one of my only few friends. I'm not going to say like I'm one of the only Zoomers that reads. Obviously, that I don't want to sound like an idiot, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's harder, you know, to find like a lot of people who share my same interests when it comes to books and stuff like that. So for like a long time, like a lot of the people that I'd be chill with were like all way older than me, and that was like the only way I could really talk about any of my interests. And it's kind of like, you know, how it is right now, I guess. But it was never like a healthy thing. For the longest time, I was always like, when, you know, you hear that expression like, oh, born in the wrong generation, like I took that to heart so
Right.
badly when I was a kid. I was like, oh man, like I'm totally born in the wrong generation. Like all this stuff before me was like way cooler. All this like modern stuff sucks. And eventually I grew out of that. But it really struck me when you said that, because I was like, oh yeah, that was totally me. Growing up, I was like totally just kind of like sick with my media obsession. I was thinking about like what could be, and what was projected in these films, and all like the, you know, fantastical universes that they created compared to what was in front of me,
Absolutely.
you know?
And it runs deep, and I don't know if like a cinephile can ever truly get past it, because like if you look at your most formative experiences, like the first glimpse of eroticism I ever saw in my life was like Titanic. It was film, and it was a massive screen. That has to have some sort of effect on how I process sexual things, right? It has to have some sort of effect on that. And same with, I'm sure, like, come on, murder, the first like violent thing of ever, it's all been on a screen, the first introduction to it. So my first introduction to so many very human things has been so cinematic. I think part of these postmodern teen shows and teen movies, what they are expressing is that all of us are media obsessed at this point. We've all been informed by it. So I don't know. I think it's inescapable in a way now, especially even more so since we have phones, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah, in a way.
I wish they kept the principal and Dawson. I wish they at least kept Bianca Lawson longer. The best video I've ever made, in my opinion, where I felt like I peaked in my teen television analysis, was my analysis of Bianca Lawson in Teen Wolf. It's like the featured video on my channel. It's my favorite one I've ever did, but it's literally for no one but me, apparently. I love the video. I get really deep into it in my analysis of her in Teen Wolf. Even if you haven't watched Teen Wolf, you can watch that video because it's really just an analysis of her entire career. up until Teen Wolf, where she's playing a guidance counselor guiding teens through their problems. Go support that video if you haven't. It's actually my favorite.
I think another thing that's cool, seeing some of the stuff that you've done with your content, I like how I began to notice this. I was gonna make so going off of that one comment you had about your first exposure to like a lot of things through media. That really hit. I was able to understand that way more, like way more tangibly, because a lot of the stuff I'm watching is off of my girlfriend's TV. They have a Roku, and Roku has this weird option where it's like a live TV kind of simulation. I call it that because it's not like you're going to like a cable box and you're flipping through the channels like you would with Comcast or something. It's this weird thing where it's like a bunch of like Roku like hosts the channels, but it'll be weird channels where it's like, here's an entire channel for Saved by the Bell, or here's like an entire channel for westerns or Turner Classic Movies or whatever. So they have a whole channel dedicated to Saved by the Bell. And when I'm bored, I'll kind of just like watch it and absorb it, because I never kind of like really saw the appeal of it. And I figured, like, why not? I'm just going through this era where I'm like, why not? Let's just absorb all this, try to understand what the culture was like at that time, just being nerdy. Watching that show gave me so much perspective on like what TV must have been like at that time. And one of the biggest questions I had when I first started watching it was, why do people have such fond memories of the show? I really hated it watching it. I was like, this is so like, like derivative and dumb and just kind of like dumbed down and stupid. And when I was talking to my friend about it, who like lived through that time to see it on television, he was explaining that same thing to me. He was like, oh no, a lot of like people would like tune in to watch like the girls and like kind of like ogle at the girls. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Because, it's just such a different experience for me.
Well, Tiffany Amber Thiessen had a huge effect on boys a little bit older than me. Like, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Screech had no effect on anyone, though.
Yeah, that's another thing that's funny you say that. Like, all of these like references, like people making fun of Screech, like I can totally understand now. I'm like, oh wow, like I can't believe I missed out on this for so long. The more you get into that rabbit hole of like just seeing like all these shows coming one after the other, and like what was happening at the time, and like how all of these shows kind of played off of each other and how they must have played off on the time slots. It's very like it makes sense, like seeing the progression. Like I could see the progression from something like Dawson's Creek and how Gilmore Girls would have captured the attention more of people in comparison to what Dawson's Creek was doing, and how like Dawson's Creek was like losing viewership over time, like what they were doing in the last few seasons. It all makes sense. Like you can map out the history and you can kind of get a feeling of like what was going on based off of like what each show is doing, and you can kind of like build a better like vision of what was happening at that time, which is what I'm all about. So
Ruben with time traveling warlocks. So Felicity turned into Charmed. Well, I've never watched Charmed, but Felicity was awful. Felicity turned terrible. But I'm glad you brought up Charmed, because I do have to say, if I basically run a YouTube channel at this point that's devoted to Y2K, to 90s and 2000s film and television, rest in peace, Shannon Doherty. I love you. You're amazing. You're a legend. You're an absolute legend. And I've just started Beverly Hills 90210. I'm probably like 12 episodes into the first season. She's brilliant. She's brilliant. She's brilliant. Love her to death. I think before this stuff, the only things I saw her in were like Mallrats, but obviously like she's strikingly like beautiful, and she's a great actress, and she has like a lot of power just in an image too. So I'm excited to spend a little bit more time with her, but it was tragic to hear that news over the last couple weeks that she died. I have Crohn's disease. She had Crohn's disease. She was like the Crohn's disease baddie, everybody. I am now officially the hottest person with the disease, and that's a burden I can't handle. I love you, Shannon Doherty. You're amazing. But Beverly Hills 90210, that's the next show I'm doing, in case you didn't know.
Nice.
Everybody, it's really interesting what they're doing so far. Like the first season I think is 1990 to 91, and you can already see the 80s archetypes turning into 90s ones, and the way that fits into the new 90s context. And I hope by the end of the show I'll see the teen television format itself change into something more similar to Dawson's Creek, something more modern. I think through Beverly Hills I'm going to be able to do a lot of what I like to do and what you were just talking about, like figuring out the narrative of a culture itself. I think through 10 years, through the entire 90s. That's when the show ran. Like that's going to be really exciting and eye-opening. And already people like Shannon Doherty and Luke Perry are amazing on the show. And I see why they're legends already. I see all the comments. I'm going to skip a little bit because I'm going to go back to them, but this is directly connected. And that's what I'm learning, Ruben, about Sex and the City. The creator of Beverly Hills 90210 is a television genius, right? He must be, since he created Beverly Hills 90210, Sex and the City, Melrose Place, and like a couple other ones that I don't even know. Yeah, Darren Star is his name. I'm covering another two television auteurs because it's produced by Aaron Spelling, who is huge. So through Beverly Hills, I'm going to be able to talk about a lot of cool stuff.
Dude, either that comment read my mind because I was literally about to ask you about Sex and the City next. I'm like over halfway through with that show now, and
is it good?
It's really at a point I kind of was just like, there's only so many teen things I can go through, and I was kind of getting burnt with it. And eventually I was just like, okay, this has been on my watch list forever. I'm going to give it a chance. But it's really like, I completely understand the hype behind Sex and the City, and it's really good. And I like it. I don't know how you'll like it. It's hard for me to say, but I think we have similar enough taste. I feel like you'll really enjoy that. I think it's cool.
So far, I'm appreciative of his stuff, of Darren Star's stuff. In Beverly Hills 90210, and he's still relevant. He's the creator of Emily in Paris, and I know that's a big deal over on Netflix. I think like he's still relevant in the television space, which is shocking to me.
There's this weird thing on YouTube that was happening. I remember, I don't know how it worked, but back in the early days of YouTube, and it's weird to say that I can remember when like YouTube was like first up and running. And that's like a weird like generational thing for like Zoomers, but like there was this weird phenomenon of like a bunch of YouTubers at the time making, so like a lot of YouTubers would do rant videos, and those were popular back in the day, but there were so many YouTubers making rants about how Nickelodeon was better back in the 90s, because at the time all these people had been like young, like millennials, so they were like old enough to remember watching like Rocko's Modern Life or whatever, and like their cartoons, and like you can't do that on television or whatever, or whatever, like Ren and Stimpy. And what those videos were such like a dangerous, like if those videos never came into my life, I probably would never like be into like any of the 90s or 2000s TV that I'm into now. And it's crazy that there were so many of them, and that they were so kind of like prophetic to like how everything is now, because obviously like everybody now, I mean, like I went into Walmart the other day, and they're kind of shilling Oreos for like the new Beetlejuice reboot. And it's crazy that to see that progression, because for a long time it was just like, oh yeah, this is like these are the weird rant videos I'm watching on YouTube when I'm like 10 or 11, talking about how 90s Nickelodeon was better. And that's what I could relate to, because I was also watching like dumb Nickelodeon shows like SpongeBob or whatever. And now like the whole culture, like I saw the progression from like that to like, okay, Nickelodeon's now they have like a block that's like all their 90s stuff for like the people who like want to watch the 90s stuff. And now like eventually they brought it to streaming, and then eventually it was like we want reboots of all of this stuff, and now it's like like you can't see anything else but reboots. So it's like so weird how that happened, and I think about that so much. It's like really strange.
I guess you can say Saved by the Bell was like a Disney Channel show. Yeah. When I was heavily criticizing Felicity near the end, like it didn't feel as much like J.J. Abrams. It didn't feel like Star Wars as much as it felt like Boy Meets World. And I thought that was the biggest insult I can give it. But to be fair, shows like Saved by the Bell and Boy Meets World were targeted at kids and preteens. I don't think they were targeted at teenagers or anyone older.
That's fair. Yeah. Another weird thing with the Y2K stuff. Oh, this is one thing I wanted to bring up to you, because I wanted to get your thoughts on it. But another like niche kind of interest within, or this was like a larger niche interest that I had, that has obviously kind of like infected. Well, to me, it's obvious it's infected like the youth culture now. For the longest time, alongside like my general like 90s or like early 2000s interest, ever since I was in high school, has been like 90s rave culture. And one weird funny thread that I've been able to find between like all of these shows that I've watched is a lot of them have like some sort of rave episode. Saved by the Bell, they
Yeah.
had this weird, in the college years, they had like a rave episode. Dawson's Creek, they had a rave episode. There's plenty of like weird 90s rave films that are really,
Mm-hmm.
cool and interesting, but it's weird seeing how they kind of play off of each other, and it was funny seeing like those two kind of like interact. But yeah, and it's funny because they just weren't two things. It gave me perspective on like how big like the rave stuff was culturally, because I'd like to think of like all the 90s rave stuff like that interest as like a complete separate thing, but seeing it was almost like unnatural to see it interact with Dawson's Creek in a way, like the way
Right.
it did. It was
Would
funny.
would you accuse the WB of sanitizing rave culture for that show, or just Dawson's Creek has to latch on everything that's trendy at the time because it was WB?
It's weird. I mean, all the this is my one recommendation I'll make throughout the whole thing, but I would really suggest the movie Groove. It's like this 90s rave film, and I watched it with my girlfriend, and it was really there's no other rave film I think that nails like the aesthetic and like the vibe. And I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but like it just it hits everything for me perfectly. But I mean, but it's like a hard thing to obviously capture. I mean, like to put like a rave into the world of Dawson's Creek, like it kind of I mean, they seem to handle it pretty maturely. I mean, like giving that character, I forgot her name because it's been a minute. I'm so sorry, but giving her like an overdose, giving Andy like an overdose.
Yeah.
I mean, that it seemed like pretty appropriate in the episode, and like it felt like as mature as they were gonna get, and like the vibes kind of felt cool. But I mean, it's hard to get like really into that interest because I'm so like niche and weird about it, and like so obsessed with it that like seeing it represented in any other stuff is like kind of I could like really go crazy about it. But it was cool at least seeing like how it played off in that episode. It was interesting. So
So I'm just looking at pictures of the Groove movie. It looks good. Rachel
oh
True
yeah,
was in this shit? Hell yeah. Rachel True from The Craft is in this movie. I have to
oh
watch
yeah,
it then.
no
She's
yeah,
like one of the only friends of the channel. She shared my video once, and I'm like in love with her now.
oh that's
Rachel
crazy.
True, everybody. We love Rachel True. I watched Party Monster. I thought that was interesting for seeing Seth Green and Wilmer Valderrama and Macaulay Culkin interact with one of the most notorious stories from the rave scene, right?
All I could think about when I saw Wilmer Valderrama in that film was that '70s show. But I really like Party Monster
Well,
again more
I think
so.
that makes it better though, because all I could think about with Seth Green was like Oz and Austin Powers, and
Yeah,
then that '70s show and Home Alone. All of these like things that shouldn't be interacting with rave culture, interacting directly with it,
totally.
made it kind of interesting.
It's so difficult because when I talk about this stuff with anybody else, I mean, when people hear that some of my favorite fave films are Groove or Party Girl, or which I loved your review
Mm,
on, and I know I've told you how much I love that, and that
I
we share
love
that.
Party Girl.
Oh, so brilliant. But when I tell people that these are my favorite films, they just don't get it. And it's hard for me to sit there and explain, well, it's because I have more of an interest sometimes in the aesthetics of the film. And then because of that, it makes me more open to like what they're doing with the story. And then it gives me like a unique perspective on that. And so it's really difficult to try to explain that to people. But because I've been able to follow that string of interest, it's really led me to it's funny how it's led me to all these like similar films. It's just interesting. But yeah, Party Girl is so good. Wow.
Party Girl's amazing. Parker Posey should marry me already and quit this flirtatious game we have in my mind.
100%. Yeah.
Jill Roberts is my girlfriend. Damn. I love Danny McPhee from Dawson's Creek. You know what? Underrated character, I'll say
Yeah.
Andy. And I will also say, no, I won't. Never mind. I think Jack was very awesome until the end. He lost a little bit of something when Andy left. There was a little bit of something that he lost, but he was still fascinating to engage with. But Andy was just great. I prefer her over the Busy Phillips role near the end.
Mm.
I mean, but if we're talking about anybody who wasn't around very long on Dawson's Creek, we know that the queen will forever be Abby Morgan. She should have been a star of the show. She should have.
Really, you think
But that
so?
was, she didn't like being in North Carolina to film the show, and she wanted to be in LA with her boyfriend, and she just thought it was lame. So
Wow.
they're like, fine, we'll get rid of you. But she was perfect. I have about 1,000 videos on her. But Andy was great. Andy was great.
Yeah.
I liked her
I
and Pacey together a lot. Underrated couple, to be honest.
one thing that I think is so that was so surprising about, okay, well, two things actually, I'll say this. Um I was really surprised when I first started watching Dawson's Creek, because Dawson's Creek, to me, like when I look at how my experiences with like a lot of the people I've known, like there's so much more crazier stuff happening within the lives of the people that you know, that
Mm.
than is usually portrayed on TV. And the fact that Dawson's Creek was so accurately able to capture, like, oh yeah, like, no, there is like a lot more mental illness in like suburbia than you know people give credit to, or that there's a lot more like death or like crazy stuff happening. It just felt so. I was really shocked with like how accurate it felt. Like a lot of the stuff I knew growing up, I was like, oh yeah, I have friends whose families are like on meds, or like they have like a family member who, you know, suffers from deep mental illness, or
That's
some,
something
you know,
that's worth investigating for sure, that I
yeah,
haven't given too much thought to, but the late 90s specifically was very, very devoted, interested in exposing like suburban frailty, suburban mental illness, considering that even outside of Dawson's Creek and shows of that kind that investigated the same things, the biggest films at the time were like American Beauty, The Virgin Suicides, Girl Interrupted. Like there was a very clearly was trying, maybe since it was a postmodern age, suburbia was being deconstructed. In the postmodern age, we were deconstructing everything, and suburbia was certainly within the crosshairs there.
yeah.
uh,
Oh, the other thing I was gonna say was the only disagreement I have with you out of all the stuff that I've ever watched on your channel. I disagree that Dawson's Creek and Gilmore Girls, that they didn't get as interesting after they left high school. I
no.
To me, I really sincerely think that Gilmore Girls is tough because there's a lot of tumultuous stuff that happens once she enters college. But for me, I was just as stuck with Dawson's Creek once they left high school. I was honestly, like, I kind of was like a little bit relieved, because I was like, oh, okay, now they can like escape like all of this like boring stuff that happens in, you know, high school, and they can get into some like real cool stuff. But Gilmore Girls, I was maybe a little bit more. It's tumultuous because like there's so much that happens between the
Gilmore Girls
characters.
did one fascinating thing at the end of season 4, like the very, that's my Dean. Like at the very end of season 4, did one interesting thing during the college years, and then to me, no. To me, these shows work so much better in high school, because you are forgiven for a variety of things, for being overwhelming, for being melodramatic, for being chaotic, even for being hypersensitive. It doesn't really feel the same way when these characters are like outside of high school, outside of the frameworks of it. And I think that I've said it before, I think that postmodernism works best, even politically, within high school, because Veronica Mars and all these other Gossip Girl shows that like interact directly with wealth disparity. Dawson's Creek too. Like if we just went to college, we'd never meet Pacey. Like
Sure.
these kids like are forced to, no matter where you are, you're forced to go to school basically, and the richest kid could be next to the poorest kid, and they have to interact with each other, and then some drama will happen, something will be investigated. When they go to college, it loses a little bit of that. Those first 4 seasons of Dawson's Creek are beautiful, like I love the Chilton stuff in Gilmore Girls the most.
Sure.
And that's when they handled it well, because at the end of season 4, Rory does a very high school selfish girl thing of like, that's my Dean. And they handled it well because it feels cruel now that she's an adult. Like, I don't think it would have felt that cruel if she was still in high school, but they wrote it interestingly so that it pays off that she was actually in college then, if you understand, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, are you a fan of? Have you ever seen Igby Goes Down before?
yes, I have seen Igby Goes Down.
Nice. Do you like that film?
I used to watch it all the time. when I was first getting into movies. I like
Wow.
it. It's like it feels like an unofficial adaptation of Catcher in the Rye, but that's fine. That's fine.
That's
Ryan
funny.
Phillippe is so fucking good in that. Claire Danes is amazing in it. I mean, I just named the whole cast and tell you they're great in that movie, and Karen Culkin is outrageously good in it. But I mean, that deals with everything I was just talking about, basically. And but he doesn't interact with anyone else his age, so it's difficult.
Yeah. No, yeah, I was gonna go off about how much I love that movie as well. But I think the one show out of all of the shows in the teen space I've seen so far, I think Glee would be the only one where I didn't like it as much once they entered the college or like outside of high school space. It felt too if how do I describe it? And I know you haven't seen like any of Glee or much of Glee at all, right?
I've seen the first season.
First season. It's well, I mean, out of all the stuff that I've seen, it was probably my least favorite, but it still has a special place in my heart because of I think of the people I watched it with and the time in my life it came to me. But it's that out of all the shows, it's weird because it still has like a huge fandom now on Twitter, and it still has like a lot of people are like making like content about it, and like there's like a lot of love for it and everything, and it has like a really weird cursed history, but it's
Yeah,
strange because it just doesn't it does like a lot of stuff in like really racy and like kind of like edgy and weird ways that
that's Ryan
uh
Murphy.
yeah, but then at the same time, it's like I don't know, like it fails like on like a lot of other ends. Like it just when it goes into like the big city or the real world, I don't want to spoil anything, but it just feels like it's not as poignant as it is in high school. So that's one example, I guess, where I'd agree with you on that case of things getting worse as they
Well,
enter into college
the
years.
thing, at least with high school, there's a lot. I think it's even narratively better when you're in high school because like life is a Sisyphean struggle, right? But when you're in
Right.
high school, you can at least see your graduation day at the end, and that's like a narrative climax or reward or closing of a segment. And then when you get to college, not most, but there is a big part of every teen show that becomes slightly aimless, which is okay because then you can become slightly experimental, like in Gossip Girl or Gilmore Girls, and kind of explore things you don't really have a lot of confidence in or don't know exactly where it's going to go, and you might come to some interesting conclusions with that. But with high school, you see graduation day, and that's the end of an era, the end of a large, overwhelming narrative. Once you get to college, though, then it's just the perpetual struggle. Then it's like, I don't know what we're working towards. Normally, what you end up working towards is a marriage. That's
Right.
normally what teen stuff will do, is work towards some characters getting married and try to end with that, something like that. Glee is on the list to cover. Beverly Hills 90210 is going to take me a long time, ladies and
Oh
gentlemen.
yeah.
That's like 300 episodes, but Glee is supposed to come after that because Ryan Murphy, you can't ignore Ryan Murphy. He, we might not love him, but he's fascinating and certainly shaped television or streaming, whatever, into what it is right now.
Yeah. My girlfriend has been signing to me the whole time you said that she loves Ryan Murphy. She's been giving like hand hearts. How do I describe it? Like the thing that shocked me the most about Glee. Well, I was gonna follow. I was gonna follow. I'll follow this. I'm sorry. I'll follow this with a question. Uh, the thing about Glee is that it's so unlike Dawson's Creek or Gilmore Girls. It's very serious and very unserious at the same time. It's so, and you can kind of get that from the first season, but it'll get extremely serious and
Yeah,
like it's like high stakes at one point, and then the next episode it's like, oh, this is all just like a joke, whatever, blah. And that threw me off a lot, but it makes sense that it still resonates with the Zoomer audience because that's kind of how our humor is now. I mean, like it's extremely, you can't tell like how serious or unserious it is, and it's kind of like vague and it's a little bit obscure. But I was going to follow that up with I know you were saying a lot about how the teen drama space like is really good for postmodern storytelling, but is there anything that's really stuck out to you when it comes to like postmodern storytelling, like the kind of sphere that we're in now?
um, I'll answer that in a second. Hopefully, my
No,
brain
you're
will
good.
think about it while I just have to say what I remember most about season one is like you said, the most serious, unserious thing I've ever seen is Diana Agron pregnant, singing with a bunch of other pregnant girls. It's a man's world.
Real.
Like, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. Ryan Murphy, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? But okay, postmodern. I think technically you can call Pretty Little Liars that. And while I'd put that near the end of my favorite teen shows, it wasn't trying to be the best either. And like near the end of it, the showrunner, I Marlene King, is getting like so obsessed with methods of communication, or like the way that information is presented. Without spoiling anything, one character sends a text to another, and we spend the next 3.5 minutes following zeros and ones, a binary, through like satellite systems to where the other phone is. And it's like we've become this obsessed with like we're past the point where we've deconstructed communication, and now we're focusing on the zeros and ones of communication itself. And to me, that is definitely postmodern. I think that the answer for a lot of people would be, I'm gonna get to all the comments just so you guys know.
Oh yeah, you can go off on that. I didn't mean it.
I can't. Someone said something about Euphoria. I've never watched Euphoria. That would be a lot of people's answers within this space, but I've never watched it. I think that teen content today, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it would be. Because like Dawson's Creek and Beverly Hills 90210, they and even like Degrassi Junior High before offered certain things to young viewers, and those things that they require, or that they want to be satisfied, those questions, curiosities, and plot lines, I think that they continue in different ways and formats. And I'm wondering, I'm gonna sound so old, but like I'm wondering if like certain TikTok videos or TikTok series can like give you the same kind of feeling as that in like a very different, more interactable way. Because that's what true postmodernism is. It's not television. It's probably just music, or it's social media, which is its own art.
Yeah, I mean, it made me think a lot about, and you bring up these questions a lot in the videos, because, I mean, on the surface, yeah, like, obviously everybody I know, or most of the people I know, all the Zoomers, it's like, yeah, we're on TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I'm listening to Storytime stuff. I'm seeing stuff come up. But for as many people that there are doing that, there's also, I mean, my girlfriend also being a Zoomer. I mean, they introduced me to a lot of the stuff like Glee and Gilmore Girls. So I mean, they're still consuming this content, and it's still resonating with them. So it's hard. And to speak on Euphoria, that's like a really interesting case, because my girlfriend could speak more to that, but I mean, I haven't watched it yet. It's hard because for the same reason I haven't really gotten too far into The Sopranos. I with The Sopranos, and this is kind of controversial, but with so many pieces of media, and I'm like so sensitive with what I watch, it's some things just take more than they give, and Sopranos is one of those things where it's just so dark and brooding, and it's so heavy, where I just feel like in the time that I'm using to watch this, I could watch something that I probably enjoy a lot more. Like, I get the point of like all of this like negativity and the dark stuff and the violence, and it's not that I can't appreciate it, because there's a lot about The Sopranos that I really appreciate. But you know thinking about Euphoria, and I guess I shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but yeah, I'm feeling kind of the same way, just seeing the amount of like stuff that's I hear is covered in that show.
I'm perfectly fine judging a book by its cover when it comes to an HBO show.
Fair point.
You know how I feel about it, probably, that HBO shows to me aren't beholden to commercial breaks or kind of intrusive studio notes that can sometimes be really fruitful and interesting. And they format their shows, their episodes, even just more like cinema itself. And I think it takes away from the natural, like, built-in power of television. I don't really view HBO shows as television. I know I sound elitist or like a purist, but I'm not. It's the people who like prestige television who are the purists, everybody. It's not me. It's the people who think that Sopranos and Mad Men and Breaking Bad are 10 times better than anything on a regular network or something, because, I don't know, they can follow 10 episode seasons instead of 22, like real cultured individuals. But prestige TV, there's no difference between prestige TV and elevated horror. There's none. None. Just trying to like feel better or feel above someone else for watching prestige TV, and Euphoria is the prestige teen television show.
Right.
And I don't think Sydney Sweeney's hot enough for me to watch all of Euphoria, guys. I'm not into it.
Man.
Pacey's arc with his family putting him down hits hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. And that's not something that, like, that's why high school to me is so important. I think that means so much more in high school. And like I said, we wouldn't even see Pacey if this was college. He was what, a cook? He was like a cook and
Yeah.
then a stockbroker. That's one of the problems, because then they become aimless with certain, like, why make Pacey a stockbroker? That was the weirdest fucking thing that happened to Pacey. Was
Yeah.
it, well, the goatee was the weirdest thing that happened to Pacey, but the fact that he was
Oh my
also
gosh.
handling stocks. Same thing happened with the first Marilyn Munster on the Munsters. She wanted to be with her boyfriend in New York. Unfortunately, they weren't together very long. Well, I don't know who Monica Kino went to see. If it was Edward Furlong, then those two crazy kids are still lighting the world on fire. I think Monica Kino was in Undeclared after, too, that failed show in college that Judd Apatow made after Freaks and Geeks. I don't hate it, but it's definitely not as good as Freaks and Geeks. I think she was the star of that, if I'm not mistaken. So
I never got a chance to get into Freaks and Geeks. I still have to go through My So-Called Life as well, unfortunately.
oh,
I,
My So-Called Life is brilliant.
yeah.
So it's perfect. Season 2 of Dawson's is my favorite. I think mine is 3, actually. I love 3 so much. When Pacey outright rejects the narrative of Dawson's Creek, when he's like, you know what, I'm done being this fucking silly, goofy, wild card best friend. I'm gonna get the girl. It's my turn. And then Dawson turns into like an antagonist in the last 4 episodes, and they even film him as such until he breaks down crying, like, on this shirt. Oh my god, it's amazing, because it's like you can view it in so many different ways. It's like Pacey is because it's Dawson's Creek, so Pacey's like rejecting God's narrative, God's plan, and creating his own, forging his own. But like the best way for me to view it is like an actor, or like the character within the show itself rejecting the show itself. And it was so
Yeah.
smart. It was
No,
so
I mean,
smart.
that's where I think that all this postmodern stuff gets it right, because they weren't afraid to, like, it was just a sweet spot of like, we have like what the destiny of the character is supposed to be, and then the opportunity for the character to break out of it. And now it feels like there's such a disregard for, and I'm kind of generalizing here, so I might sound like an idiot, but it feels like something you see now is that there's like such a disregard for what like the preconceived role of the character should be, that like, and there's like no respect for it, that they don't even like give it like a chance to like be played with in the same way they
Exactly.
did. Yeah, like in the same way, like the way you broke down like the Chad Michael Murray thing, like explains this perfectly. Like what makes it so good is the fact that like that's what, you know, the characters that's what's supposed to happen to him, and then it doesn't happen, and it's cool that it plays off of that. It's cool that it's playing off of that device, but now like there's such like a lack of respect for any of that, that you know, we're just kind of, you know, well then what's the point? It's like we're just trying to make things as real as possible, or like as much of like a simulation of real life as possible. If that's the point, then that takes away the whole kind of magical feeling, I think, of like a lot of the movie going or the TV watching or whatever. So
No, absolutely. I've said this a few times too. My favorite criticism of something like not giving something enough time, or going right into like the inverse of the unexpected or deconstruction way too quickly, is that like Donald O'Connor in Singing in the Rain, if you didn't originally show him dancing on the floor, it wouldn't mean anything if you showed him dancing on the wall. For like, you have to
yeah,
show him do it normally before you turn it on its side. And that's what the postmodernists understood so much back then. And yeah, I was thinking of Chad Michael Murray as well, where we were talking about Tristan Dugray's exit in season 2 of the show, and his character doesn't have the freedom that Pacey's does to reject a narrative. He just throws a temper tantrum for about 45 minutes of like, man, I'm supposed to be Romeo. I'm supposed to be who you end up with. We know this. Everyone knows this. I have to leave now. My character doesn't get to fulfill any of the bullet points. Doesn't get to do any of it. But it wouldn't have meant shit if he wasn't all throughout the first season. The fact that he comes, and that's his only season 2 episode is
yeah,
his goodbye, and it's like episode 9, runaway little boy or something, and it's one of the best episodes of teen drama I've ever seen. uh
sincerely.
it's so good. But they allowed people or they were more willing to play with those things back then. And well, with 22 episodes, you get to. That's the benefit of having long seasons, is that like if you condense it down to Euphoria, which is what 8 or 10 episode seasons, stuff like that. Once again, I'm judging the book by its cover, but you don't get to have episodes that are narratively experimental and rebellious, like the Chad Michael Murray leaving episode in Gilmore Girls. You don't. That would be cut. That serves no point to the overall plot. With 22 episodes, you get to do so many different creative things, and that's, I think, what was so interesting about Y2K television. Honestly, it's the last of that 22 episode stuff.
Yeah.
I liked the part when Dawson got the internship at the movie studio. After that, I didn't find it that interesting. It just didn't feel right.
The only thing I remember with the later seasons that really got me annoyed was that one. Gosh, I think about it now. It's just so funny. That one scene from like one of the Osbournes, he shows up. You know what I'm talking about? The young boy, the young son of Ozzy Osbourne shows up in a cameo. That was really. I wasn't even annoyed with the No Doubt episode. That I was like, okay, whatever. This is like.
I love the No Doubt episode. Yeah. It was so sloppily done too. But No Doubt are also in an episode of Gossip Girl. They were all over it.
There you go. So yeah, I can't even be mad with them at them with that. You know, that's whatever. Like I can look back at that and be like, that's, you know, Gilmore Girls has an episode where they do, you know, their own band. So you know, it's just it's whatever. I don't care about that. But seeing, I can't remember what episode that was. Yeah, where one of the Osbournes is in it as like a cameo, and it just felt so un-Dawson's Creek. That's probably the only moment from that show that where I was really like, this is not what I love about the show at all. Yeah,
you haven't seen anything yet until you've seen Gavin DeGraw did the theme song for One Tree Hill, like I don't want to be anything, and that motherfucker shows up like 4 times in the show itself to play it for the cast for like the characters on the show.
Crazy.
And you're like, why is this happening? God. Why are all the characters just vibing at open mic night to their own theme song? What are we doing? This is amazing. ML, it's great to see you. Question for Jupiter, or a point for Jupiter. The point you made with Glee about the weird, serious, unserious dichotomy parallels how weird pop music can be, which to me is the most interesting aspect of the show.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, I guess Glee kind of does cover more than just pop music, but it is pretty pop music centric. And it's funny, it covers like a lot of like the weird, you know, cultural moments that were happening during that time. Like I can't remember. I was watching one episode with my girlfriend. It's like they cover some weird internet meme that like no one else besides people who are like really nerd about like who are like really nerdy about meme history, or who are just like alive for the time would understand. But yeah, I guess it does kind of play off of like the you know, themes of pop music, but I don't know. Maybe just it's something that I need to look more into before I speak on it. But it's hard to tell. I mean, it's just a weird show. I don't know what to say about it. It's so weird.
Most teen shows aren't really watched by teenagers these days. There needs to be a revamp of teen tropes to make them more relatable to the youth. That is okay. I'm trying to think of modern teen movies. Do any of them play ball with like the standard tropes apart from like Disney Channel movies? Like, do any of them actually play ball, or have they? That's the thing with Gen Z that like interests me the most, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because millennials, we grew up in a generation where all our forms of communication and art like were deconstructed while we were coming of age as well. But then Gen Z and Gen Alpha grew up in an age where that was already done, like that was already deconstructed to begin with.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, it's so tough. I think about this all the time, like exactly what you said. It's so tough. I mean, it's also like there's so much more. There's so many more options now for Gen Z. There's like there's a million things. There's manga, there's anime, there's, you know, K-pop, there's older shows on streaming. But one thread that seems to be pretty consistent is that the teen shows that I see get on like streaming and stuff, like that are all like, you know, big like Netflix productions, they all seem to be pretty unanimously made fun of. by people, or at least like the people I know. Maybe that's because like I'm just closer to like nerdy people than not. But it seems to be that they're all like pretty unanimously like made fun of, or there's more like awareness of like how like kind of cringy they are, because now there's like so much different perspective that can get blasted in your face all at once with TikTok. Like, oh, this is
Yeah,
cringe, and like it's like everything is like really like hyper soaked in like irony. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, but like I guess even like what's a good example?
I
Like
like that phrasing so much, hyper soaked in irony. I might I might have
that's
to lift
yeah,
that. That's amazing. But even then, I feel like when I was growing up too, like when I was a teenager, I think a lot of us made fun of these shows as well.
there you go.
But I think it exposes an insecurity in the young people who make fun of these shows, because like we are cringe when we're young. Like that's the point. That's
Yeah,
the point. And I think that like maybe it not necessarily hits too close to home, but you don't want to interact directly with your most sensitive heartstrings, which is what these shows are like dedicated to doing. Film and television, or doing film and television discourse, I think they're completely out of touch, at least with Gen Alpha. Like I don't know what Gen Alpha's conception of film, television, streaming even is. I don't know how to do a revamp of teen tropes.
it's hard for me even. I mean,
Like they tried that with Mean Girls, is like the last time I can think of that happening,
right.
and it worked. Like that's it.
Yeah, and that like even for me it's difficult because like even me like I'm still like on the younger curve of like Zoomer,
Mm.
like just being my age. Like I even consider myself more of like a millennial maybe, but like I at least still remember like okay, you know, this is like what YouTube was like before like all like the corporate shit was like coming in, and like this is like a time before like you could even get Netflix like on your TV. You had to get like a little disc sent to you or whatever, and now it's just like completely I don't know. I would say something, but I don't want to risk sounding like dumb because it's like I haven't grown up in it, so I don't know.
Oh no, it's fine. I sound dumb half the time, and then I sound really smart the other half. It equals out.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes, The Sopranos is objectively good, but I can never really connect with the plight of the Italian mobster. Same. But I am at the exact age where the plight of the Christopher Moltisanti is extremely relatable.
There you go.
Jersey Shore is amazing.
Oh, so good.
That's art right there. I could analyze Jersey Shore for a while. Dawson should have been with the blonde girl. You call Michelle Williams by her name in my chat.
Man.
Wait, hold on. I hate Freaks and Geeks. I've never found it funny. How come when you're saying the most like incendiary things, there's no typos, there's nothing? It's just
That's so true. That's
perfectly understandable. I don't love Freaks and Geeks as much as everybody else. If I'm picking one show from the 90s that got canceled after one season, it's My So-Called Life every day, every night. But now that I think about it, it makes sense Dawson and Joey don't get together, considering Williamson is gay. It mirrors his real life. I
I don't
mean,
think he wasn't thinking about it like that though. I think that's like too like shallow to think about it like that. It's because he obviously it seems too silly. That would be kind of funny actually if that was the case. He was if you just that would be such a
and that's
huge
why
drop.
she's called Joey.
Yeah, that he's just like actually you know what, this would be a great way to just to end to top off this thing I've been working on for that would be
But
really funny.
obviously, the self-insert for his queerness is Jack.
Yeah,
Like he put that in for himself this way. I know that Dawson's kind of a self-insert of him, but I'm pretty sure they're all parts of him.
of
All of
course,
them.
right? How could it be anything else? I think about
Yeah.
that. I'm like, yeah, like I mean, like that's just I guess how it is with writers. But
Go watch my season 6 analysis video. I go into Jack a bit near the end. That video is almost entirely dedicated to Jen. Thought Jen was amazing near the end. Jen, that's one thing that really improved actually over the course of Dawson's Creek, is that that was like Michelle's acting school, and by season 6 she's incredible. Like every line is interesting and like
yeah,
captivating and surprising. Like she's an incredible actress by the end of the show. She gets better and better, more inhabits Jen more and more and more as the show goes on.
sincerely.
Kevin said if he were to do a Dawson's Part 2, Pacey and Joey would be split and eventually find out how to love each other again. And Dawson, after achieving his goals in film, he'd finally find true love. But he still wouldn't get the girl.
Yeah, I mean, like, Gosh, I can't even imagine what a Dawson's Creek Part 2 would look like now.
I can't watch them without Jen. It'll like upset me.
It's too much. I mean, like, and considering in this in this landscape, I don't wonder if they'd cover like the writer's strike and everything.
Thank you. So basically, a better season 5 and 6. Yes, that's exactly what happened in season 5 and 6. They split and eventually found out how to love each other again, and then Dawson achieved his goals in film. Well, I mean, he didn't find true love. Well, he did. It's Joey. He just can't have her.
Exactly.
What was this? Movies and TV on serial killers is just modern day exploitation. I mean, to be fair, when were they not though? Like The Silence of the Lambs was an exploitation movie. It just won a bunch of Academy Awards. So you cannot tell me that's not just exploitative. Hannibal Lecter might be a cannibal in the movie, but he's chewing up every piece of scenery that there is, and their Buffalo Bill is just pure exploitation. I'm not saying it's bad, but Seven to a certain degree is exploitation. I think they've always been exploitation. A large part of film and television is all exploitation, though. I don't really know where it ends necessarily.
Yeah, it's such a weird line. I think about that quite often.
Moving on. Dawson should have thrown Gretchen Witter the pipe. Oh yeah, he should have. I remember Gretchen. She was amazing. Pacey's sister.
Yes.
I don't know why he didn't.
It's coming back to me now. Oh my gosh.
Because cinephiles are losers. Jill Roberts is my girlfriend. That's why he didn't. That's why Pacey was just stealing virginity like Pokemon cards.
Yeah, real.
ML, I have my issues with Euphoria, especially by season 2, but I do think there's something intriguing to unpack there as far as postmodern teen tropes in this Gen Z alpha era. I mean, it might be there, but like,
I'll come to it probably once I'm like done being young Gen Z and I'm like into my old like jaded Gen Z era where like I'm looking back and then like I'll look back in retrospect and be like, oh man, like once it gets like it becomes popular to like look back at like Gen Z media and it becomes like a real like fad, and like I'll probably switch all of my positions and be fake as hell and start being like, oh, I actually liked all this stuff.
Might be interesting to unpack, but I don't know how much I'll be able to unpack something that's, like I was saying earlier, like 22 episode long seasons lets you unpack an awful lot. There you get to play with archetypes an awful lot. 8 episodes? Waste of time. I mean, I love you, ML. I will check it out, but I'm like very apprehensive. Speaking of Dawson's Creek, what do you think of Katie Holmes directing in Alone Together in Rare Objects? I didn't watch the film she directed with Jim Sturgis, but I heard from someone who has good taste that it was awful. I think it's cool that Katie Holmes is working behind the camera, doing more creative things. I love Katie Holmes. She will always be awesome. True love without Joey, finally getting over the past and such things. He could have something even better with someone else other than her. You can't have anything better than Joey, Jill Roberts.
Yeah.
Except for Jen, and she's dead. On topic of teen shows going bad in college, I feel the reason is that the characters have no reason to be together. They're all living their separate lives. Yeah, that's a harder... It's always fun to see how shows juggle that as like, why are these people still friends?
It made more sense with the Gilmore Girls, even though it was tumultuous, because okay, like they're all like real, like hardworking, overachieving kids, and they end up at this like Ivy League school, and their friendship just like happened. It felt like more plausible, I guess, with Gilmore Girls. And another thing about Gilmore Girls, which I thought was so funny, the first thing when I watched it through the first time, I never gave as much consideration to Paris Geller as you have over the course of your videos. And going back and seeing what you had to say about it was really poignant and really funny. And
thank you.
Yeah, it really made me reconsider how important Paris is and how much of the show and why I love it is because of her. And yeah, she's a baddie and she's the best and she's awesome. So
yeah. Also, what Gilmore Girls did really smart, and they couldn't have thought this far ahead, was the kids were already separated by class or even by intellect, because Dean and Jess didn't go to school at Chilton, so we never even saw them at school anyway. So like
Yeah.
seeing them in a different context outside, it wasn't that hard. And you just brought Paris with you, and that's the only Chilton person who was still there because Chad Michael Murray left. So
Yeah.
it was way easier to juggle that shit.
Totally. And
Lane didn't even go to school with her, right? Yeah.
and it totally felt more, well, a lot of it felt like too, like you were just expecting it to get to the college part because so much of it was like, oh, like she's, such an, like we said already. I mean, she's such an overachiever in high school. Like everybody like, just working so hard. Like that's such an essential part of her, their characters that it's like you're just expecting to see them perform in college. Like, oh yeah, of course this has to happen. Like they've been working so hard in the high school the whole time. Like what else could come after? I got to see how this plays out.
I think it was terribly realistic with the other kids who went to normal school, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, Jess didn't go to college, right?
Did Jess go to college?
No, he just became a writer.
Yeah, he just became a writer.
And Dean became like a labor worker.
Yeah.
Like, and then did Lane go?
Lane does. Yeah, she has the kids.
She has the kids, so she couldn't go to college. That's that's actually like the sad part of Gilmore Girls, that everyone who didn't go to Chilton didn't go to any school.
Yeah.
Like, geez, wow, I never even thought about that. That's teen tropes that started as being embodied separately in characters and in different, sometimes conflicting groups start blending and socializing together in somewhat interesting ways in Euphoria. Well, I mean, I will watch Euphoria, but so far I could get that from every other teen show that's ever.
We got to do a group watch, like, or we got to do like a Euphoria club as we end up.
Okay, watching. When I finally do Euphoria, that'll be a big deal, and ML, you'll have to be at the group watch to coach me through it.
That's some crazy stuff. That's funny.
Well, okay, so you were Team Dawson, but were you Team Jess or Team Dean?
Okay, so here's the thing. First time,
sounds like a Dean fucking thing to say so far.
I know, so you're gonna hate me.
Oh,
and
no.
my girlfriend gives me so much flack for this. The thing with Dawson's Creek and Gilmore Girls is that they came to me at such a weird transformative time in my life. I mean, I'm still like in my 20s, so like stuff changes, and I've just recently turned 25. I'm only halfway through 25, so. Take everything. Most people I know would probably like, I think besides like my Zoomer audience would be like, whatever, this is just like a kid, like a 20-year-old, whoever, who cares about this. This is like not important. They don't, they don't really know what the real world is like yet or whatever, like the full scope of stuff. But for a long time, in Gilmore Girls, I'm super contrarian. And I really pushed hard just to like see the opposite side because everybody's like, Dean, whatever, I hate him, whatever. And I wanted to try to see the positive in him. And it's interesting because I mean, I guess that's always allowed me to kind of get a different perspective on whatever I'm watching. But now as I was rewatching earlier episodes with my girlfriend, I was like, man, Dean is it's actually scary how future-proofed and how like accurate they got Dean to like a lot of like dumb guys nowadays, and like the stuff you'll hear on TikTok that girls will say about guys they've been with, and like the way they act, like it's just like things like never change. And the way they capture that in Dean is so accurate, like how dumb he can be and how like hard-headed and how just like not thinking about his actions.
He's borderline abusive to his wife near the end there.
Yeah.
Like the most chilling thing about Dean, I loved Jared Padalecki was excellent. I'm Team Jess, obviously, because I have a soul. But
totally. Oh yeah, me too. Don't trust me. Like at the end of the day, like Jess,
the most chilling thing that Dean said. Remember when he and Luke were both being toyed with essentially by Lorelai and Rory respectively, and Dean just was like, "You and me, same thing, same archetype. Like, don't you get it? Don't you get it? We're the same thing. They're not going to end up with either of us. We're both just." And that was such a chilling. And I think the episode ended with him saying that, and that like, ooh, I think it was like season 5 or something. That was incredibly done by Dean.
Seriously, yeah, no, that was brilliant. I think the thing. It's hard. The first time I really was like with Jess's character, it was I was thrown off with how standoffish he was, because I still didn't see. I just didn't see the full picture. That's the problem with it. Like once now on the other side of it, I can look back and be like, oh, this is brilliant. I see exactly the role he plays in this.
Yeah,
But at first I was like, man, I was so put off by how standoffish he was and how like pseudo intellectual he could come off
it's true.
as.
It's true. I mean,
Yeah,
come on, he is the guy who's reading Bukowski. Like he is the 16-year-old kid with a Bukowski obsession. He's insufferable sometimes.
exactly.
That's another fucking problem with modern television, especially HBO television, because they're made like fucking movies. You get to take 3-year breaks in between seasons. Remember back in the day where you get the summer off and then you're back to fucking work, man.
It's just, yeah, it's a different vibe when you have restrictions on you, and you know, you have an audience of people tuned into their television, and so they just come with they come with their. I try not to simp for it too hard too. I know what you mean though. It's hard. It's hard. It's really difficult.
Well, because like you're interested in culture and philosophy, and if you look at the WB as a whole, you get a huge idea of at least the idealized forms that teenagers or young people wanted to take, the
Yeah.
idealized forms of their lives, just by looking at what the WB had on a fucking Thursday night, you know. And I like when a network or a studio does have some sort of cohesive philosophy behind it. It makes it more artful, to be honest. I'm not saying it makes it more genuine, but more artful. Like, what's the philosophy of HBO? Just like existential crises, like suicidal middle-aged men. Like, what is the philosophy?
Right.
Because if it's just existentialism, then that's way more immature than anything the WB stood for.
Right. I don't know if you've seen like any of like the trends on social media where like people, a lot of kids like my age get obsessed with stuff like the aesthetics of like certain, how do I even explain it? Like there's this one trend going around named like Fruitiger Metro, and it's like the aesthetics of like a lot of like operating systems of computers and like stuff that you'd see in like offices and like weird corporate stuff. Yeah, and a lot of it is just like reminiscent of like you know, like what you'd see as like a kid, like wherever your parents would take you. And it just feels like them try. I can't blame them because my interest in like Y2K stuff was like, you know, I was interested in like an era that was close to me, but that I wasn't there to like fully experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt kind of nostalgic. So, you know, seeing the same thing happen, but just for like something that, you know, I was maybe, you know, more cognizant during was, you know, I guess it makes sense. I'm kind of rambling at this point now, but yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think like it stems from like nostalgia or childhood insecurity, like of like do you think that they feel comforted by those?
Yeah, no, 100%. Because every Zoomer, we did this one video talking about, and I wanted to say I really love that's a Mazzy Star tattoo on your hand, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, we did a whole video where I got the chance to with the YouTube channel I'm with. We got to do an interview with Slow Dive, and they were really cool.
What?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
we got to meet them, or we met two of the members. I didn't get to meet the main guy, but I met Nick and I met Rachel Goswell.
I was hoping you weren't going to say Rachel. Now I'm jealous. That's amazing.
It's so funny. They're so, I mean, like they're so like purely British. Like there's no other way for me to like to put it, but we were talking to them, and we were talking to them about like why people still listen to music, you know. And I remember I grew up in high school and I was obviously exposed to the music, and it's the point I'm trying to make is that like the generation we have now like is so, and I'm kind of treading carefully when I say this, but it's obvious just statistically, like we're more depressed, like we're more confused, we're more like lost and or you know, kind of hopeless about a lot of things. So it makes sense that they're latching on to these things for comfort, that they're kind of playing with like a lot of these aesthetics or like this music or whatever to kind of, I guess, I don't know if I'm reaching by saying this, but like maybe test out like aspects of like adulthood, but through like a lens they're familiar with. Yeah, no, 100%, because it's so everywhere they're getting. I mean, it's even easy for me. Like I really have to, as much as like I want to put myself into the mindset of people my age and people younger than me for the sake of what I do for work and what I enjoy, like this kind of cultural critique and making fun of stuff. I have to like really go be chill with it sometimes, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed with TikTok. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with trying to follow everything, with all like the irony and post irony and just confusion that you're being faced with. So yeah, it's absolutely out of comfort. I mean, people are, they're listening to this music, and they're playing around with these aesthetics because they want to be comforted, because life is so hard for them, because everybody I know is like, struggling to find employment, because everybody I know is struggling to pay for school, or all these stuff that, not a lot of it's new, but it just feels uh especially strange and kind of scary and weird, because you have the whole extra layer of trying to deal with all this new technology and things like AI, and jobs being replaced, and like a pandemic that came before us, which is obviously insane. So I don't blame Zoomers at all, and I'm a Zoomer, and I understand how it feels to all of this stuff. I understand what happens. Yeah,
like millennials understood the sensitization, right? Like through Columbine and 9/11, but you guys understand dehumanization more than anyone else. And I think that's a much colder thing to have to live with, feeling completely dehumanized and alienated from your own personal experiences.
100%. Yeah. Then that you said it perfectly. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. It really it is dehumanization. It's like real like atomization. It's not feeling like we have somebody on Twitter I read, like I forget who said this. We are more Zoomers have this feeling of being more atomized than ever. But there's still a very cloying and annoying and like suffocating monoculture. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but it's interesting, and I can't help myself but to just sink my teeth in all the culture that's happening right now and in the past, and just totally get obsessed with it and try to pick it apart. So, and speaking of Gossip Girl, I got to pick that back up. I got like one episode in, and I think
it's my
stopped.
Favorite.
Yeah,
I almost feel like you should watch the OC first, because like Gossip Girl's ran by Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, who started on the OC. They created that show together, and that feels like a good warm up. Like you see stuff they're playing with, and Gossip Girl, they're masters. They come in and they've mastered it. It's ridiculously good. It's like, and I think it's the perfect torch passing from millennials to Gen Z. I think Gossip Girl started in 2007 and ran up for 6 years, because it's very Lana Del Rey-ish, like the cultural kind of things that she represented within Gossip Girl, and very Cruel Intentions like, and its own thing entirely. It's beautiful. I can't wait to rewatch that one.
Cruel Intentions, I have the funniest story with that. I remember watching that film with my friend, and we burst out laughing the moment they started playing Bittersweet Symphony. We're like,
yes.
we thought it was so I mean, I loved it. I was like, I don't care how cliche it is, like how stupid it is.
But they made it cliche. They're the ones.
Yeah, it was so funny. And no, I really like that movie a lot. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That movie also made all millennials have some weird porn fetish for stepbro porn. I'm telling you.
Oh man.
Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe were on fire. Everyone was good. And that was that director's first movie ever. Like,
wow.
Great job.
And again, I wanted to say thank you. And I know we're going to keep in touch and everything, but this has been real awesome that we were able to do this on your channel. Because like I said before, I'm just like a huge fan of the stuff that you're doing, and I think it's great, and I cherish it a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think and I'm saying this more for like the people I know that are coming from probably my audience to watch this, but I think out of one thing I like to try to like wrap up everything like in a real like sweet and poignant way. And I think regardless of how, because it's easy like with what we're into to like get real, like the way we like a lot of like people I know would put it is like very like black pilled or like kind of doomer about it, is that like it's really easy to get like black pilled and kind of doomer about like the state of like film now and the state of TV, and like, oh, like TV, like we might have passed like the golden age. Like we had like this like little flash in the pan of like things being so cool for a moment, and now it seems like Hollywood is like really struggling, and we're not going to get good films anymore, and we're not going to ever get good TV again. But I think that like a lot of the stuff that I do with my job is like we really encourage people to go back, get like connected with their community, get physical, get into the real world, and make a change. And that the reason why things are the way they are now is because of us, and we can just as easily, and this is kind of like optimistic and naive, but we can just as easily like make things different. So even though things kind of seem difficult now, and like I get TikToks all the time saying like things are not good with film, things are not good with storytelling, nobody in film, like everything in film is dried up. I mean, I'm in like in Georgia, so even people I know like near Atlanta who are doing film work, like they say, it's tough. Like we haven't been doing anything. Actors aren't doing anything, and that's like it has like a whole chain of effect, downwards on like a lot of things and a lot of culture. But uh, I do this stuff, and I know you feel the same way. I do this stuff because I love it, and it's not always easy, and we're not guaranteed an easy future with film or any of this creative stuff. But it doesn't mean it's any less important. It's not like they would have had it any easier, thousands of years ago or like hundreds of years ago when they were doing plays without any TV, without any film. I mean, people have just been doing this stuff for the sake of the love of art and storytelling and all this tradition. And storytelling it's gone through like a lot more hardship than what it's going through right now. If anything, all of the problems that are kind of that we're experiencing right now, I think, with film and TV are kind of like bougie problems. Like, wow, we had it like so good, and it sucks that we don't have it that good right now. But it's still really crazy that we even have like the privilege or the luxury to go like to like do what we enjoy doing, like to watch these old shows, and that we can like work jobs and just enjoy this and like talk about it on YouTube. Like that's an extreme privilege. We're so lucky. So there's more reason to be optimistic, I think, than be doomer or black pilled or like pessimistic about it. Even though it's kind of easy to get into that mentality, and I just like ending stuff on a positive note. So
I thought that was beautifully said, and I just want to say I don't want to cultivate a doomer audience either. When I say film's dying or is dead, I'm kind of celebrating that personally, because just like I don't think that television is any lesser than the film, I don't think TikTok or YouTube or social media or whatever new forms of art that are out there where there are young people expressing themselves fully or as fully as they possibly can, I don't think that's lesser than. I think we're on the precipice of new ways of expression, of new masters of new mediums and art forms, and that's really exciting to me. And everything that Jupiter just said as well. If you are really devoted to cinema and things like that, it will likely improve in a way, or we can move to a whole new chapter of art and expression, which I think is a lot more exciting.
Totally. I totally agree. Awesome. Dude, this has been epic. This has been epic. Yeah.
Loved having you on. I'll have you on again. So.
Epic. Awesome.
Peace, everybody.